the main thing is to just continue to have contingency plans. How are you going to bring product in? What the costs are going to be? How are you going to pass those on?
Welcome to Supply Chain Signals, where we discuss the latest news impacting consumer product importers and the issues that affect your product quality and compliance. Today, Andy and I are talking about the end of the 90-day tariff pause between the US and China and how companies are responding to that. We're also discussing how production management can help ensure high-quality products. And finally, we will be providing some ideas on how you can manage your inventory replenishment cycles. So, let's begin. The 90-day tariff pause between the US and other countries ends soon. Different people have different ideas about what it means and what's going to happen when that pause ends. So, Andy, I'd like to get your perspective on this and on what might happen at the end of the 90-day pause, and how should importers be thinking about this right now?
Companies who are importing product from overseas have reason to be concerned about what happens after the initial 90-day pause ends, which is coming up soon. And to date, we only have announcements of 3 countries that have deals with the United States. A lot of those deals lack clarity, especially with China. The deal announced earlier this week with Vietnam has a 20% tariff rate and a 40% transshipment rate. Transshipment traditionally means when goods are shipped from one country, say China to Vietnam, and then just reshipped to the United States, that would be at the higher 40% rate. But the clarity in some discussions I've had with clients in the last 2 days are, does that apply to raw materials, or is it truly transshipment? Do the goods need to undergo transformation, which means significant manufacturing? So there's continuing to be a lot of uncertainty about China when the new rate goes into effect based on what was agreed. When does the second pause or the kind of delayed pause with China end? So companies are importing product with really a lot of uncertainty about tariff rates. When the pause went into effect in mid-April, a lot of companies began to rush to import product because during that interim period before the pause, a lot of factories were continuing to produce product for clients, or they stopped shipping products by that deadline date before the new tariffs went into effect. So there continues to be a lot of disruption and uncertainty. And one of the things that we've seen is a rush to ship product during this pause with China. And I think that we'll see the same when Vietnam orders somewhat stabilize once we know exactly what the tariff policy and transshipment policy apply to in Vietnam. I think companies need to continue to look at alternative countries for sourcing, whether that be moving out of China or moving from Vietnam to another lower cost country later. The main thing is to just continue to have contingency plans. How are you going to bring product in? What the costs are going to be? How are you going to pass those on? So far, many of our clients have told us that their retail partners and their clients are not accepting much in the way of tariff increases. So that means the seller, the vendor, the company importing the product in the U.S., selling to the retailer, has to absorb it or negotiate with their factory on a little better pricing, because the company that pays the tariff is the importer. It's not the country where the goods are made. It's not the factory. It's the importing company. So that company is on the hook and getting bills from customs on tariff increases. So they have to figure out how they're going to survive if their clients aren't taking on some of the cost increase. So it continues just to be uncertain, a lot of anxiety. I had a client call yesterday in the apparel business who they do a lot out of Vietnam, and we're excited about the deal in Vietnam, but they were also very concerned about the transshipment if it applies to fabric coming from China, because 100% of their fabric and the materials that they are ultimately dyeing, cutting, sewing, and then shipping from Vietnam, all that raw material is coming from China. So Right now, the best thing to do is continue making plans, alternative plans, work with your current factories on what they're willing to accept. Are they willing to accept part of a cost decrease to absorb some of the impact on the tariffs for the importers? So bottom line is that there continues to be chaos, uncertainty, and in this climate, the last 5 years or so since we started off with COVID and then now into the tariff chaos, I think a lot of companies have learned to adapt, be nimble, but there's continue to be chaos and uncertainty.
So the key word that you really mentioned there, Andy, was uncertainty. And yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of uncertainty right now. And so it's important to have those contingency plans and be looking at, how to be flexible as things change. But now I want to move on to the next topic, which is about production management. This has been a big trend that we've seen with our clients who need help with this particular service. And I think that brand owners and quality managers could benefit from understanding production management and how it works if they want to ensure product quality over the long term. So my question for you, Andy, is really, what is production management? And why would a company consider production management beyond just the typical inspections that a lot of companies conduct?
One area to reduce uncertainty for our clients who are having issues with their suppliers is production monitoring or production management. And that is much more than quality. And that is usually a result of a client coming to us who is having issues with timing, quality, communication with the factory, with their supplier, and they may be using another service provider, which is fine, but there's not too many service providers that will offer production monitoring capabilities. And we got into that because of our clients' needs. And it's a very much a growing segment for us. And it's, as I mentioned, it's more than just quality control. It is addressing the factory processes, looking at their incoming raw materials. It typically is a much longer time frame. And so clients end up coming to us because they've had a problem or they're experiencing a problem with a factory they've been working with for a long time. And so in conjunction with their factory partners, which is very important that the factory agree and welcomes Insight to come in or other service providers to come in and assist them in their processes and help address issues, because it makes the factory better, not only for the client we're working with, but all their clients. And so it's not just quality. It's looking, as I mentioned, incoming raw materials, processes, addressing the issue, finding the root cause, and working with the factory to implement corrective actions to eliminate that need. Now, production monitoring isn't going to be feasible or even realistic or an option when there's a short production run, meaning you place an order for the quantity isn't as much a factor as how long it takes to make something, because 10,000 little widgets like my cell phone holder there take a lot less time than 500 custom made chairs that all have to be within the same stain level or gloss level, and fabric needs to match, but each one's custom made. So it's not about the quantity so much as the length of time. And if a production run can be done in less than a week, it's really not feasible to look at production monitoring to help or assist with reducing issues with the factory. Probably the better option there would be conduct an audit, so you can look at all the processes and then work with the factory on a corrective action plan to address those issues. Production monitoring exists to reduce issues for typically certain products or certain SKUs within a factory's production capability that they're making for a client. So if you're experiencing issues and want to address and work with your factory on finding out what those issues are and getting to the root cause and implementing corrective actions, Insight has the capability to do so throughout Asia.
Thank you for explaining that, Andy. I just realized I used the word production management instead of production monitoring. But
Yeah, that's okay. I think that they kind of go, similar, in that uh, we're managing production to help the factory uh, have a better oversight on that. And so I do think that while the typical term is production monitoring, production management applies, and both terms can be used somewhat interchangeably.
all right, thank you. So it's good to understand production monitoring or production management, however you want to say it. So importers have an idea of what kind of options they have. The final topic that we want to discuss today is managing inventory replenishment. So, given what we discussed earlier about the tariff pause and just the general timing that importers usually have for their holiday orders, pretty much any company that sells consumer products and sees that, big increase in purchases in Q4 for the holidays should have basically shipped all their orders out by now. So, but one thing that importers sometimes struggle with is determining an order cycle so that they have an appropriate amount of products flowing into their inventory over the course of the year. And even companies that aren't really holiday dependent with their products, they also need to think about their inventory replenishment. So if a company has placed their first few orders, Andy, and now they're doing recurring orders, how should they plan the timing of those orders and how should they think about inventory replenishment?
Inventory replenishment is a challenge that all of our clients face, from the small e-commerce buyer who is bringing in a container or a couple containers a year to some of the billion-dollar retailers that we work with that have dozens of containers a week. So it's a challenge for all our clients, and I will say it's a bigger challenge for the smaller ones. It's a good problem to have that their sales are increasing at the pace where now they need to bring in the same products at a much more frequent cycle. But with the tariff policies, navigating shipping peak times, factory peak times, potentially warehousing, distribution center peak times, and capacity issues throughout the year. Those are all things that need to be considered. Holding cost might be cheaper if you can bring in product to a distribution center that has a lull up until they start receiving holiday orders, which are typically the end of summer, first part of fall. And so, as an example, we have a client that produces a item that is used in the winter, outdoor item, lawn and garden type item, and they have, over the last 10 years we've been working with them, they have gradually moved their order cycle from August, September, October, because that item doesn't really need to ship until after the Christmas items ship. And now they're producing most of their items right after Chinese New Year, and their warehouse bringing that into the U.S. before the peak shipping times for holiday items. And they found a distribution 3PL partner that they worked with that it works well with their model on warehousing. So there's a lot of pieces, and this is somewhat outside of a typical quality assurance service provider scope of services, because we don't offer shipping services. We don't typically work with 3PL or customs brokers on a regular basis. And so there's a little bit is outside of our scope, but where it does come into play is understanding the quality implications. Are the cartons or poly bags or the product itself, can they be sustained to the elements or warehoused for a long time? Are the proper elements used to decrease issues? And by elements, I mean like desiccant packs and master cartons, or the poly bag, which can help reduce moisture and humidity problems, which can lead to mold. So there's a lot of factors, and I think the most important thing is to be aware of those. And for our smaller particularly our smaller e-commerce clients who are growing, We can have conversations with you, help you ask some of the questions to the factory on when are their slow times. Would you get a discount if you produce the order 2 months earlier than what you would normally produce? And then you're able to use that savings to warehouse the goods, maybe ship at a little cheaper cost. So there's a lot of factors. We're not experts in that, but it's something to be very aware of how your order cycle can impact quality, and work together with your factory, your 3PL, your quality assurance service provider to understand and address any challenges you may have as you increase your order cycle.
So it's very important for everyone to be working together, all parties. So that covers the points that we wanted to discuss today, Andy. So thanks for sharing your insights to our audience. Thank you for watching. If you found today's discussion helpful, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. And we'll be back again soon to talk about the latest developments impacting supply chains.
I'm going to say, if you have a question, reach out to us. We love having conversations with companies, potential clients who are having issues. A lot of times we're able to help them resolve without being engaged initially. And it might be 6 months or a year later they come back because we gave you the time to have a conversation, a half hour to work through your obstacles, some scenarios and things that you might be able to do to address those. And sometimes that includes engaging us, and sometimes it doesn't. So reach out to us. You can email us at info@insight-quality.com. One of my team or I will reach out to you and respond. But if you have any questions, you want to have suggestions about future topics, please reach out to us.